So Colin, I recently started my company, Blue Butterfly Enterprises, and I have a website where I'm going to be promoting blindness issues, independence, and stuff like that. And I've been putting blogs on there, and we've been producing video content, but it's just taking, I mean, we have to edit it and stuff, but soon the videos will start being posted. But I came here today to do some more videos and interview people about their experiences and their knowledge. And you have a great deal of knowledge. So can you tell us about your experience as a blind person and as an O&M instructor?
So I lost my vision when I was in high school, and I had 20/20 vision, and it all of a sudden went to light perception over the span of a month. And it's a tough adjustment period, but what I tell all my students, you can overcome that as long as you have the will and the determination. I wanted to use all the experience that I learned being blind myself to become a cane travel instructor and provide the independence to people who don't have it. Work with blind people to teach them that crossing streets, going places by yourself is still possible. I feel like when people lose their vision, that's the first thing that goes away, is their sense of independence and freedom.
Is that what you experienced then?
Definitely. When I lost my vision, when I was going through high school, I would do a lot of activities outdoors. I would hang out with people and stay out till past midnight. And probably wasn't the best thing to do.
You did that after you lost your vision also?
No, I did that before I lost my vision.
Okay.
But the truth is, once I lost my vision, all of that changed, and I started staying at home. And I always tell people home should be a place of security. It should never feel like a prison. And I think once you're blind, that's what it starts feeling like, because you have nowhere else to go. But that's why it's so important to develop the skills needed to regain that independence and no longer have to feel like that home confides you.
So would you say that the cane actually increases your independence?
Most definitely. The cane provides you with the ability to stay safe outdoors, get the same amount of information that anybody who can see can. You get to know whether you're on the street or the sidewalk just by the texture that you feel with your cane. You can avoid objects, and the cane is the number one object that represents a blind person's independence. I'm not saying that a guide dog doesn't, but a guide dog definitely develops someone's independence. But when you think of a blind person, you definitely think of their mobility tools that they have, and the cane is currently the predominant mobility option that most people have.
And definitely a cane is preferable over just pretending that you don't need some kind of mobility aid.
Right, definitely. A lot of students that I've worked with pretend that they don't have a visual impairment, or believe their skills are better than what they actually are. So my responsibility is to show them what is truly capable when you learn to master a cane. I remember certain students that I've worked with, they've never crossed the street in their life because they were born blind. But after they learn how to use a cane, they're able to cross streets like they've never done before.
Well, and Colin, I went blind when I was 12, so I was able to cross streets before, but then all of a sudden I couldn't.
Right.
And it wasn't until I got a cane many years later that I was finally able to walk around again. So the cane definitely helps us see where we couldn't see before.
Right. Do you mind if I share the story about...
Colin, share whatever you want.
Well, I just want to make sure, because I need your approval.
I want to make sure that you're aware that this is going to be streamed out on my website. So, I mean, it's not streaming right now, but I'm putting it out on my website, so we do need your permission to put you on.
Definitely. You definitely have my permission.
Great, Colin. Thank you.
I wanted to give a story about when I was working with you that I remember very vividly.
Okay.
I remember when we went to Scottsdale Fashion Square, and you said that escalators was a tremendous fear of yours. And you said that was something you never had in Missoula. And that's kind of very symbolic of a lot of students. They've never crossed streets before in their lives. And I remember the amount of fear that you really had. And once we started working on that escalator together, I remember you fell for the first time. And it was a slightly terrifying but an empowering experience. Because I remember that was your greatest fear. But once you fell and you realized that you were able to get right back up, you were able to get back onto the escalator and didn't have any problems. Do you remember that story?
I do, Colin, and I'm sure you would agree with me as a cane traveler that just because we fall from time to time or just because we get lost from time to time, that's not a bad thing. Those are all learning experiences to help us improve ourselves.
Exactly, and that's to be honest with you, that's one of the stories, with your name excluded. That's one of the stories that I tell people all the time is the courage that it takes to not only be comfortable with making not necessarily making a mistake, but having an accident, or like you said, getting lost or falling down, but having the courage to get back up. And I think that's really what it takes to be a confident, independent blind person, is having that courage to be comfortable making mistakes and realizing that you can learn from them and become a stronger, better, and more confident blind individual.
So, Colin, I like to tell people that without my cane, I'm blind, but with my cane, I'm no longer blind because I really feel that way. My cane is literally my eyes,
Right.
and without it, I'm disabled, but with it, I'm not disabled. And do you agree with that sentiment?
I definitely see your point in that sentiment. I would kind of shift it a little bit and say, without your cane, you really don't have that independence, right? But with your cane, you may still be blind, but you have that independence again. And I would say everything becomes normalized again. Because I think a lot of times when people think about blindness, they think of something different.
They think you've lost something and you're not capable.
Exactly. And then when you have that cane, you can become normalized and feel comfortable being a part of society again. Because once you have that independence, you're just like anybody else.
But Colin, what about the people who are embarrassed of using the cane and don't want to use the cane because they feel people will stare at them and look at them funny if they're walking around using a cane?
There's definitely a lot of those people. And what I tell them is, when I first lost my vision, I was really embarrassed to use a cane. And it was tough because I didn't want people to see me as different. What I started noticing, though, was that people can tell when you're acting different. And they might not know what it is, but they understand when you don't look normal, for the sake of a better word.
Well, if you're falling down or walking hesitantly because you can't see well,
Right.
I just feel like when I used to have to walk like that, or I was falling down all the time because I didn't have a cane,
Right.
I didn't like how I felt, and I felt like people back then treated me a lot more like I was disabled and couldn't take care of myself because I really couldn't.
Right.
I was not safe. I was not, couldn't take care of myself.
Blindness does not mean you don't have the skills needed to be successful. When you develop the skills needed, then you can regain that sense of independence. And you're completely right. When people are walking around hesitant, looking at the ground, scanning their head left to right, up and down to make sure that they're catching everything with the limited amount of vision that they have, it looks different. People can identify that difference. When you have that cane and you don't have to worry about those mannerisms, you're able to walk much more confidently, and people are able to understand that there's nothing different about you. But when you are walking without a cane because you're worried that you'll stick out because of it, all those mannerisms stick out to people, and they don't have anything to attribute it to.
So Colin, let's talk about a work environment. Blind people, wouldn't a cane be in the way in a work environment, or a dog?
So with the American with Disabilities Act, every blind person has the right to bring their canes and their guide dogs to all public locations and their workplaces. There are such very few exceptions, such as churches, because it's separated from the government. But everything else, you can bring your cane and your guide dog too.
So, like any restaurant or store?
Definitely, any restaurant, any store. If you're working at a hotel, you can bring your dog there. If you're working at Disneyland, you can bring.
What if you're in the hospital? Is your dog allowed in the hospital?
The majority of places in the hospital, you are able to bring your guide dog. The only place is where they do testing, and unless you're working in that specific area, you can always place your dog in a different area if you are doing medical testing, and then come back after you're done working with that.
Now, I looked into guide dogs a lot. I am a cane user, but I did research guide dogs as an option, and I remember learning that if I chose to get a guide dog, I could still use my cane part-time.
Mhm.
And I know I was really worried that I would wind up choosing to use my cane all the time and wind up not using the dog enough. So
Definitely. So I used to be a guide dog user, and I definitely had that debate in my head of which one is the better choice. And I would say it's better to have a mobility option than none at all. And the most important thing is if you're not comfortable using a cane, either work on developing more skills in that area or get a guide dog. And vice versa, if you're not comfortable using a guide dog, get some more training in using a guide dog or use a cane. Use whatever mobility option best makes you an effective traveler.
Now-
And sorry about that, Becca. I want to go back to your question about whether or not the cane and guide dog gets in the way at a workplace.
yeah.
There's always a place to put your dog, and that is one thing that they teach you a lot in training. And there's always a place to put your cane. Whether you have a straight cane or a folding cane, there are places to put it that will make sure it is out of the way. And the truth is, it's better to have those mobility options in a workplace than not. I always think about when somebody is walking into an interview. When somebody is walking into an interview with a cane or a guide dog, the interviewer knows that that person has a disability and is able to provide the necessary accommodations to get you started in the workplace and set you up on a path of success. But if you don't have those mobility options and you go in there, they don't realize you need any accommodations, then it's really hard for you to become successful in your workplace because you don't really have the tools needed to succeed. And what happens is your company is not going to know how to work with you, and if you start falling behind in your work because you don't have the needed accommodations, you're really going to fall behind. And it's the same thing, if your company asks you to drive somewhere and
Are you saying that it's better just to level with your company up front and say, look, I'm blind, I require these accommodations?
that has to be disclosed somewhere during the interview process. Most interviews are not just one interview and you're completed. There's usually multi-step interviews, and I personally would bring in a cane in the beginning. And the key thing with the interview is disclosing all the things that you know that you can do successfully at the job to remove any doubt about your capabilities. So definitely make sure that they understand your condition, because that's not something that you need to hide, but also work with them on understanding that you are capable to do the job that you are applying for.
Okay, and so we addressed the work environment, but so legally, blind people can take their guide dog or their cane
Right.
to any work or school or grocery store or restaurant and
Correct.
should not be harassed. What about using rideshare?
Rideshare. So I know Uber and Lyft has had a couple lawsuits associated with them because of denials of guide dogs. However, Uber and Lyft are working on improving that. So I want everyone to understand that if you are denied access because of your guide dog, first, send a letter to the National Federation of the Blind to let them understand the issue you're going through. But secondly, both in the Uber and the Lyft app, there are in the settings section where you can file a complaint about your denial because you have a guide dog, and it's the driver will have their accounts terminated if they see that when you explain your situation to them and they see that you are discriminated against, they will terminate that driver and no longer let them drive on the road because they're not following Uber and Lyft procedures. The same thing goes with Airbnbs.
Colin, last summer I was at a groomer with a retired guide dog
Right.
on behalf of a friend of mine, and I went to pick this dog up from the groomer appointment, and I called a ride share to come and pick us up, and I opened the back door to load the retired guide dog into the back seat, and I was going to get in the front seat, and I opened the back door, and the driver looked over his shoulder and saw that I was about to load this dog in the car, threw the car in gear, says, I'm not taking no dog, and steps on the gas and peeled out of there so fast, Colin, and canceled the ride. I couldn't even report him because I had forgotten his name. I was so flustered by everything that happened. I couldn't remember his name to report him. I couldn't see the ride on my app. It was completely gone. I was so angry. That was why I had decided not to get a guide dog, because I never wanted to deal with that. And when I experienced that, I thought, oh my God, just not dealing with myself is not enough, because my blind friends are dealing with that. And It made me so angry.
So Uber and Lyft always keeps a record of the drivers that you are connected with, even if they cancel it. And they have phone numbers that you can call to get a hold of them as well.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing to keep in mind, however, is, well, first, I'm sorry that happened to you. That shouldn't happen to anybody with a service animal. But secondly, obviously the driver has no knowledge of this. But one thing that all service animal handlers should know is that once a service animal is retired, they no longer have the same access to public accommodations as when they're working, because the rights is not in the animal, the rights is in the owner.
I get all of that, but my point is that driver didn't know all of that.
Right.
And he didn't even give me a chance. I always thought someday if I get a guide dog, I would be able to have the opportunity to discuss it with the driver and help them understand this is a guide dog. No, you can't refuse me, sorry, so you have to let me in your car. But when I was actually in that situation, I didn't have a chance to discuss it with the driver. He just, you know what I mean?
Definitely.
I was shocked at how he was just suddenly gone in an instant like that.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, is that what my blind friends are dealing with? I was mortified, Colin. I was absolutely mortified. I felt so, you know what I mean? Discriminated.
Right.
I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. But, and that day I decided, I thought, I can't get a guide dog because I can't take the chance of missing a ride to the airport because of that nonsense or something. You know what I mean?
Definitely. Unfortunately, people with disabilities, not just blind people, definitely get that discrimination all too frequently. And it's something that that's one of the reasons why the National Federation of the Blind exists, is to really fight back against that discrimination and advocate for the rights that we as the blind deserve. The progress that the National Federation of the Blind has made since the 1940s has been very significant. Back before the 1940s, blind people could not do anything. They were just expected to stay home. You couldn't even collect Social Security because Social Security didn't even exist at that point. Over time, we've gotten more and more rights. Just recently, last year, Arizona passed a bill that allowed blind parents to have the right to parent, and that blind parents cannot have their children removed just because of their
Blindness?
Their blindness. But this is why the NFB is so important for us to continue advocating for issues like that. So like situations like you do not have to happen again, and situations that other blind people feel discriminated against do not have to continue happening.
No. So Colin, I know what the website is for the NFB, but would you share it with our viewers, please?
It's nfb.org.
So National Federation, and it stands for National Federation of the Blind.
Correct.
Thank you, Colin. Do you have any information on the National Convention next year you would like to share?
So the National Convention will be in Houston next year. So I would say for those that are interested, check out the nfb.org website and continue to check as the day comes closer. It'll be in late June, and continue checking the website for updates. The NFB does have a Facebook group that will also provide updates. You can join the NFB listserv. So they're able to provide updates as they come.
Okay, thank you, Colin.
Definitely. Thanks for making it to this day convention.
Yeah, thank you, Colin. I appreciate it. I'm really glad that we did it. Thank you for watching Becca's World. Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel.